Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eddie Marcus, spokesman and advocate of basic human rights for all people. When you look at the world, and I've heard many people indicating that they do that quite frequently, they look at the world to make an assessment of the conditions, where they've come from, where they are, and perhaps where they might be going. And a question that comes to my mind, especially since I've heard so many times it said that God makes no mistakes. You say God is good, and all that God made is good. And then what happens when you come across something perhaps that does not give you the impression that it is good? Some might say, well, that simply means that God has a purpose for this act, and eventually the goodness that is it will be made manifest. Some might say that is always the excuse that people who say they are familiar with God will do, making an excuse to justify the unjustifiable. Having spent some 40 years out here in the society as a spokesman, trying to make a difference based upon the understanding that I have of God, not of the Bible, but of God, and to no avail. But I would like to share with you something that I hope will make it known about certain events that are essential to bring about certain changes. Today we have a president of the United States that seems to have no understanding of God whatsoever. That is made obvious when he speaks one thing and turn around and speak another thing in regards to that same thing, and they have no relevance whatsoever to one another. But there is something that seems to be apparent in all of the decisions that are made, whether they are considered good or whether they are considered bad. For my mindset, for the things that I do, I consider the fact that God is good, because many miraculous things that have happened to me that I equate as being good. Some might say, well, the struggles that you encounter, the hell that you have to go through, you do it. Is it because God is not good? And when I look at that, I see that there's a responsibility of that which God has created when it refers to man. Man has choice to do or not do, and must be accountable for that choice without doubt. And so it seems to me, and should be apparent to many others, that this should be considered in the decisions that we make that reflects the actions that we are capable of taking care of. I put this together, excuse me for a moment. I put this together because it appears that everywhere struggle is, especially when it comes to a level of nationalism, is based upon conflict of not having what you require to survive. And it is by my understanding and acceptance of that understanding that a power that would make human beings would also not only require that certain essentials are met in order for that surviving to be maintained, that efforts would be made to make sure that when those elements for survival are identified, that the necessary action would be taken to satisfy them. And this being a reality that every human being experiences, it makes me think that there is a system, an understanding. If men don't have it in the beginning, it should be something that they grow to. And I don't know when the world started. I don't know when humankind came upon the earth. But in my lifetime, it seems that just that short amount of time is enough time for people to understand what is essentially necessary for the people to do in order to survive. And so I would say to the American people and people of the world that we the people make America and whatever our nations might be, we the people make it great, not government. Government truly is a reflection of the people. But if we want government to be responsible for our actions, then we must be responsible to government. So I'd like to ask you these questions. Would you like for evil? Would you like for hate, for crime and violence, terrorism and war? Would you like for poverty to end? Well, if you do, you must change things. It appears that this responsibility is in the hands of man, considering that man has choice. And it is the result of man's choices that deny the freedom from these things that I mentioned that you might not like. If you want to know what I perceive as the door that leads us out of this hell, is that we must give the earth back to God who created it. And to do that means we must give it to the people for whom it was created. Now, if the people are to receive from the earth that which is necessary for human survival, then each human must have a career of his own choosing. In other words, the people will work continuously as they do today, but in a career they choose for love's sake. Everything that is made is in partnership with one another. This makes everyone eligible for anything that is made. This approach denies the need for money in order to work. Love for the job does that. Also, you don't need money to buy what is yours. This also eliminates the need for lying, for cheating, for stealing, for killing. Further, this eliminates the need for a boss, a master, a slave. So there is no hatred, there is no evil, and there is no division. This allows all people to live peacefully, to be prosperous and joyous. But the choice is yours. We might acknowledge that the United States of America has found itself in many wars. And if we did our research, we would find that most of the wars are predicated on the fact that getting and accumulating and amassing more material wealth or resources is the push that carries the United States and other nations, I'm sure, into war. One thing that is being said here in America today is that the flag represents patriotism. It represents people who have put their lives on the line to assure that the rest of Americans could have those essentials so that they could survive. There was a time when I was a kid. I grew up in the system of indoctrination in America's education system. And they used to tell us on television and in books that the West was won by people who stood up, people who went into the military and fought to take land, to take the Indians' land, in fact. Now, the way I look at that now, to take the Indians' land was a sin. It was an aggression that only someone who is absent, loving compassion could do. And I say that because there's another element that could have been used, and that is cooperation, which was not practiced. It was practiced by the others, the ones who lost their land. But by the one who says the strong will always win. The strong seems to be the one who will stand up and tell a lie, knowing that they're lying, and deceiving someone else thinking that they're telling the truth. This is apparent with the President of the United States currently, 2017. Will tell you what you want to hear and then take the opposite action. And the sick thing about that today is that those who say they represent an alternative to that appear to be falling in line. There's one specific thing I'd like to refer to as I talk about this flag. And I do this because every flag has two sides. And while you have been indoctrinated to believe that picking up a gun and going into your community, killing people for another people, or going outside of your borders, attacking other people for any gain that might come to your people, it might make you patriotic on the one side, but it does not make you patriotic on the other side. And so the question becomes, which is right? Is right on the side of those who take what they want and say, I got it? Or is right on the side of those who lose and say, God help us? Well, I'm sure that those who get what they want will never say, God help us. I was reading a statement by Ho Chi Minh about the war of North Vietnam, and where 58,000 people, American people, lost their lives, and many, many, many more of the Vietnamese lost their lives. Ho Chi Minh made a speech once, and I'd like to refer to that speech. And he started that speech off with the first lines of the speech repeated verbatim, the famous second paragraph of America's 1776 Declaration of Independence. In it, all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This immortal statement was made in the Declaration of Independence of the United States, 1776. In a broader sense, this means all the people of the earth are equal from birth. All the people have a right to live, to be happy, and free. Declaration of the French Revolution made in 1791 on the rights of man and the citizen also states, all men are born free and with equal rights and must always remain free and have equal rights. And according to Ho, these were undeniable truths because as Vietnamese, they felt the same exact way. Whether you were under the auspices of democracy, communism, socialism, or fascism, it doesn't take away any of the statements that are before mentioned. But can it happen? Will it happen? Has it happened? So I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, what happened in Vietnam according to Ho? Ho said, yes. I mean, this is really something nice, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to share it with you, and I want you to think for a moment. I want to read it to you, and I want to read it to you slow. Nevertheless, for more than 80 years, the French imperialists, abusing the standards of liberty, equality, and fraternity, have violated our fatherland and oppressed our fellow citizens. They have acted contrary to the ideals of humanity and justice. In the field of politics, they have deprived our people of every democratic liberty. They have enforced inhumane laws. They have set up 3 distinct political regimes in the north, the center, and the south of Vietnam in order to wreck our national unity and prevent our people from being united. They have built more prisons than schools. They have mercilessly slain our patriots. They have drowned our uprisings in rivers of blood. They have fettered public opinion. They have practiced obscurism against our people to weaken our race. They have forced us to use opium and alcohol. In the field of economics, they have fleeced us to the backbone, impoverished our people, and devastated our land. They have robbed us of our rice fields, our mines, our forests, and our raw materials. They have monopolized the issuing of banknotes and the export trade. They have invented numerous unjustifiable taxes and reduced our people, especially our peasantry, to a state of extreme poverty. They have hampered the prospering of our national bourgeois. They have mercilessly exploited our workers. That is a statement recorded by Ho Chi Minh of North Vietnam, in which we were in war with for a long period of time and lost all the lives, our side and theirs. And the things that they stated had happened to them by those who invaded them, denying them the same basic principles that we claimed in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and what other nations are currently doing, and all for the purpose of exploiting what others have had. Many of you might say, because of your side of the flag, you got a place to stay, you took the land from the natives. But I'm sure the natives would not agree. There would be on the other side of the flag. I'm sure that those of you who went and brought in slaves to build America up, your side of the flag would be happy, but on the other side of that flag would be disgust. I'm sure, without a doubt, that everything that's going on in America today, where an imperialist people, a superior people of white people, and I have to say this because blacks don't call themselves superior in America, no other race does, so superior that when they put a structure in the Bible, they would tell you that the Bible represents, in words, that God is represented by a man of melanin who has hair like the hair of a sheep, white and woolly, nappy, who has eyes of fire. And they left that there, but just to make their point, the real point that mattered to them and the indoctrinated process, they put a picture there that represented a total different person. A blonde, blue-eyed, long beard, white person. Many of you would say that it doesn't matter, God has no color. If that was so, you would have left the picture of anybody out and would have just left the words, suffice it to say. And so we stand here today in the middle of a decision that has to be made. And it has to be made by each and every last one of us, whether we are an American or someone else. And that is, how are we going to face the future? Are we going to face the future as one who look at others as brothers? Are we going to face the future as one who recognizes that we need each other in order to realize that heaven and life that we all say we want so dearly? Or are we going to believe that it's only possible if we take the responsibility and the power of God in our own hands and wipe off of this earth that which we didn't make but some other power made, for the purpose of making sure that our impression and our understanding of what's right is done. And it doesn't matter who we have to hurt to do our thing. It doesn't matter who we have to cause suffering to have our way. That's one side of the flag. There's another side of the flag. When the powers that be, who structures the systems in which we live on their own, empower the military, whether it's actually that force that you put across the waters, whether it's the National Guard, whether it's the police force. And when we have set up a way in such that we plan to maintain our dominance, whitely speaking, that we must eradicate people off this earth who have melanin. And so we've given the nod, as Donald Trump gave the nod to the Nazis when he made that statement in Charlottesville. When he gave them the nod that do what you gotta do, it's all right. When he made that statement, if I walked out in the streets and killed somebody, they would still appreciate me. I'll get you off, he said. Beat them up if they come in here making noise. I'll see you clear, he says. Now, that doesn't sound like anybody who's talking about us, all of us. That sounds like somebody who wants to have their way. And I have seen men who call themselves powerful men in government, men who are rich, men who have a measure of intelligence. Most of us have indoctrination. And they sit up and watch this president make fools of them because what they say they couldn't stand, they find themselves, as days pass, inching closer and closer to what he is about. And so I say this to you, ladies and gentlemen, because we have come into the day that a man must stand up. A man, if you want to know what a man is a person who accepts God in his best. I heard someone say that right envies no man, right hurts no man. So to do one thing causing pain to another is as wrong as it can possibly be. Yet, the flag has two sides. When you allow the nod that gives the cops the authority to stop people of color, whether they're in traffic lights having to do with a broken tail light, or whether they're walking down the streets backwards and you don't like it, and you call them out, and rather than make your statement, you end up killing them. And rather than being prosecuted for your acts, you are given a vacation. That makes the flag to those, our flag. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the white people's flag. The man who dies on the street is on the other side of the flag, saying that the flag should be burned. And anyone who finds themselves on the other side of the flag should never stand up for an anthem that gives sanction to the whites who have caused all the pain and suffering on the other side. I am stating these realities, ladies and gentlemen, not to put blacks up against whites or whites continuously against black, but to get them to perhaps understand that life is life and it doesn't have a color. Life is life. And in order for it to exist, what it takes for one, it takes for the other. And a man knows that. A man does not put down a white man to build up a black man, or a black man to put down a white man. The truth is we're all here, and for us to survive, we must work it out together. And if we cannot work it out together, it is by my belief, by everything I can muster up as far as a belief is concerned, is that it is the duty and the responsibility of God to wipe us all out. And may that one who is superior to God stand. And I have heard that even the devil can't do that, but I don't know. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying to you today is that we all want peace. We all want prosperity. We all want joy in our lives. But if we can't work it out together, we don't deserve it. If you see your neighbor who has, rather than decided that God's way of brotherly love, God's way of working things out together, God's way of doing things unto one another as you would have them done to you, is too long, make no sense, and that they should follow the other God, the replacement God, the God of those who would be superior to God. I heard somewhere in the Bible, I don't know if it's true, that Jesus once says to the disciples, render to Caesar that which is Caesar, and to God that which is God's. So, if you choose money to replace God's way of life, money as an acceptance of man's way of life, then what you're going to do is exactly what you're doing. You're going to lie, you're going to cheat, you're going to steal, to do everything that you want to do, because to you there's no other way to do it. And you're going to teach your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren the same thing. This is why Donald Trump is how he is, and I'm using him because he's sitting on the highest seat in the country. Because that's what his father taught him. And what he's doing is the same thing that he's teaching his children. And his children will teach their children the same thing. And unless a man somewhere stands up, they're going to get away with it. And I know you might say, well, to those who have stood up, the men who have stood up, they have been washed in rivers of blood. To what end? The purpose is to create more men, not to run and hide. For liberty, my friend, is God. Truth is God. And right is God. And lying and cheating and stealing ain't going to change that. Think about it. The choice is yours. Bye-bye.